Welcome to the Supplement Engineer Podcast. My name is Robert Chinesky. Joining me today, co-founder, chief product officer for JOCKO Fuel, Mr. Brian Littlefield. Brian, how are you?
I'm great, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How did we all come from such disparate backgrounds into the supplement industry? So I'm always curious. First time I have a guest on the show. What is your background? How did you come to get involved with dietary supplements in the beginning, and then start Origin, and then progress to JOCKO Fuel?
Yeah, I can run you through a quick version of the history. Sometimes it's a kind of a crazy story, so sometimes
Mhm.
it takes a long time. So kind of to summarize it, I grew up in an athletic family, and I was the last in my family to be born. So I was the baby, and to five half brothers and two half sisters. So
Wow.
yeah, and I was by far the youngest. I was definitely an afterthought, a mistake, as my brothers like to joke around. And I'm the only one between my parents, and I didn't get my brothers. Let's say that my brothers, three brothers on my mother's side, I didn't get their like quote unquote genetics. So I always, even as a kid, I was like a fat kid. Like I was a little bit overweight, even though I was active. I played, soccer, baseball, basketball, football, everything. Still continued to be overweight, chubby. And so continuing that trend, I stopped playing ball sports in high school and really got into like cars and girls and became even more overweight. Obviously, the physical activity was out of my life at that point.
Yeah.
Then I went off to college and like really blew up. So I was like, I'm 5'10. I was like 265 pounds of like no um like no muscle. Like it was just fat. I was obese,
Yeah.
pre-hypertensive in my early 20s, just like very unhealthy at the time.
Yeah.
And I grew up in like a somewhat healthy family. Like we didn't come from money, so we didn't eat the best, but we always prioritized like sports.
Mhm.
We kind of knew what was right and wrong. My father was somewhat holistic, and my mother was a nurse.
Mhm.
Um, and I had a bunch of people in my family that were like in the related medical field, like close family. And so I always took interest to all of my AP classes and everything. And I did really good in science,
Yeah.
like in all. I scored like top of my class. But like
Mhm.
when I graduated, I wanted to go into school for. Eventually, I wanted to go to school for business, but I excelled in the sciences, which was kind of funny. So I go off. Long story short, I blow up. I'm overweight. I am in college and
Mhm.
I'm bored with like the classic elective. So I like go to my,
Yeah.
um, I go to the school and I'm like, hey, I want to take like 400 level bio as an elective, and they're like, nobody does that. Like, what do you mean? Like, and I'm like, yeah,
Right.
like I got to take something. I got to fill these slots. So let me just take these courses. And they're like, okay. So I did that. Um, did really well. Crushed it, and because it's things that you also like that you have interest in, you do well at. Go
Yep.
figure.
It's natural.
So, so I always like understood the science really well,
Mhm.
and at that time, I was like, I had come to a realization. I hit that epiphany, that kind of crossroads where I was like, okay, I need to find a healthier path, and so I have this, obsessive compulsive need. When I lock in on something, I'm going to go do it in a crazy way. So I
Mhm.
quickly found myself like I had met a guy, became a gym partner. I remember he gave me a book early on, an old school book. I still have it. And I just like dove into the literature and was like, okay, I need to learn about all of these nutraceuticals and
Mhm.
compounds. And I was like, okay. So I quickly got home from school, found myself being up all night reading, clinical studies and whatnot, just like deep diving and
Yep.
putting in hundreds and then thousands of hours. Fast forward, I had then started Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I was, a couple years had gone by. I was teaching. I was running an academy for an instructor who later became a business partner. I had gone from 265 pounds through this healthy living and applying these nutraceuticals to my benefit. from 265 pounds all the way down to like I was competing in MMA and jiu-jitsu,
Mhm.
and I was as light as 155 pounds at one point.
Wow.
But um my kind of like sweet spot was like between 170 and 185 is where I felt
Mhm.
really good. I felt good, I looked good, and I was very happy there. And had kind of just became this sponge of all this information.
Yeah.
Well, I quickly became through training partners and traveling and doing people's fight camps and things like that. I quickly became
Mhm.
the person that everybody came to for nutritional and nutraceutical advice. So I'm like curating these programs for jujitsu competitors and fighters and stuff.
Mhm.
And I went to my jujitsu instructor who owned the academy, and I was like, "Hey, dude, like we have this spot in this plaza. Like we have a ton of traffic. Let's open up a small brick and mortar and see if we can at least sell to the you know students. Like
Yeah.
let's put it up to the public and see what we can do."
Mhm.
We did that, and you know what? Like we made money. We didn't. We certainly didn't get rich. We made money, but what was good for me that I didn't realize how valuable it would be in the time down the road
Mhm.
is I was able to, when you own an independent supplement store, you have every single brand that you can imagine reaching out, trying to send you information, samples. They're sending out sales reps. They're doing everything, and you're just. It was like a crash course in the industry, and I was learning about products and ingredients that I had never even heard of before. And so now I'm taking all these, I'm curating these programs, I'm getting to see what did work and didn't work for these athletes competing at a
Mhm.
very high level, some at the highest level, and I was just like, okay, cool. And I'm just absorbing, absorbing, absorbing. Well, eventually, through jujitsu, I get introduced to Pete Roberts, who's the actual founder of Origin, the parent company that before the company severed, and I can touch on that. But the parent company of Origin Labs, which later became JOCKO Fuel, that was founded by Pete Roberts in 2011. I met him in like 2013 or early 14 when I was traveling back to Maine, where I'm from,
Mhm.
and we just started. I went there to train jujitsu, and then
Yeah.
fell in love with the made in America clothing side of things, which has evolved from jujitsu gis, which is the only thing that was made at the time,
Mhm.
to boots and jeans, and now hunting gear. It's all made in
Yeah.
America,
Yeah.
100% from scratch. So I fell in love with that, um, and was like, hey, I'm not really going anywhere with my business here in Ohio. My
Mhm.
business partner, just a few months prior, had decided he was going to leave Ohio and move to Florida. So we were like having a hard time figuring out how we were going to really, move forward with the business, the academy. And so we just decided to dissolve everything and go
Mhm.
separate ways. Like out of like destiny, I guess. I get a call literally after me and my partner had had that conversation. Like 15 minutes later, I get a call from Pete. He's like, "Hey, would you want to move back to Maine and do something? I know you want to do something on the supplement side of things." Because I had
Yeah.
pitched him on that like early on. I'm like, "Hey, we should like if we build this relationship and I can help Origin and come on board,
Mhm.
it'd be perfect for Origin to do a supplement line."
Right.
And I was like, "And I can help facilitate that." And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, we'll talk about that, but I need help with this thing." And so I was like, "Okay, cool." So I went to my wife and I was like, "Hey, let's move back to Maine, and I'm gonna partner with this guy Pete, and we're gonna do this thing." And
Mhm.
and that's what we did. So I helped grow Origin for a few years, but only a few months after I had moved back to Maine, another niche brand in the jujitsu community
Mhm.
uh, was they wanted to sell their business. And Pete actually happened to
Oh.
know the business owner, and it was called Q5 Sports Nutrition. And it was like this little micro brand, real micro brand in that jiu-jitsu community, but it had a built-in customer base, and there was a lot of
Yeah.
customer overlap between that and Origin. So it made sense to just absorb it, move in, and then we could rebrand the line or whatever. So that's what we did. We brought it in, we rebranded it, we ran that for a year, and that's
Mhm.
when we got introduced to Jocko. And Jocko didn't even know we were doing supplements. He didn't know
Right.
any like we were doing nutrition at all. He wanted to get involved with Origin. And quickly as he came in, he was able to see like, hey, look at all the stuff these guys are doing. I think it's all great quality stuff. I wonder what I can do. Basically, he became the megaphone
Yeah.
at the end of the day. So um, we had a conversation, and he's like, "Hey, I was kind of he was kind of tarnished by the industry back in the old muscle milk days when they had the heavy metal thing."
Yeah.
And he was feeding it to, I mean, he was eating it, his kids were all athletes, they were all like consuming it, because he
Yeah.
believed in that stuff. And that came out, and it was depending on how where you sit on that side of the data, regardless, like for people that don't understand the science and don't understand like the actual parts per million and billion, etc., like
Correct. Yeah.
it's scary. And so
Yep.
he was tarnished by that, rightfully so. So when we talked, he's like, "Hey, can we do this? We'll do it with my name, but man, we got to make sure that this stays clean. We got to make sure that it's tested. We got to make sure that we're using stuff that actually works." And
Hmm.
we had a conversation, and we were just like, "Hey, we'll sacrifice some profits to put people first, so that they can, because they trust the man, they'll trust the brand, and we
Right.
just gotta match um, that kind of personality through the brand, and as it is for the person." And it was very organic. And so we
Mhm.
came out of the gate, and we literally launched one product, and it was really successful. And it's just been a sprint ever since.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on the success of the brand and the evolution of things to thus far, and it's only going to get bigger as you can probably see from the back end, from the analytics and the sales reports that you guys are having.
Yeah,
Um,
it's been really good. And I try to it's a short rant, but I try to summarize it as much as I can, because there's a lot of stuff compacted into that relatively short period of time. But um, that's how it became alive. That's how it became a thing.
Fascinating. Okay, there's a couple of jumping off points I want to go to first. Growing up, I was a taekwondo student, so I did that from the time I was 9 until the school closed right when I graduated college. Supplements were not real big at that time. Like we drink Gatorade, or I mean, I didn't even know what the hell protein powder was at the time. And granted, the flavor technologies were not what they were today. What tip and plus there was that connotation of supplements are pretty much for just gym rats, bodybuilders, or that. What is it in the current state for MMA athletes? Just the average people in there, not the ones that are competing on UFC and Bellator and all that stuff on TV, but the people in the average Joes that are just training their asses off. Are they using supplements as regularly as people in the gym nowadays?
I think it's pretty close. Yeah, I really do. I think it's over the last, I would say, 10 to 15 years, it
Hmm.
has increased significantly.
Yeah.
Um, People, as like MMA training, wrestling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, those combat sports are extremely physically intense, and
Yeah.
people, you know, for one reason or another, whether it's they want to fuel their hydration, or they want to fuel their recovery, or they're a competitor and they want that little extra edge, like
Yeah.
it's the understanding of, and I also give it up to the media, like certain people,
Hmm.
excuse me, the Joe Rogans, the Jockos, the Andrew Hubermans, like these people have really shed light on the idea that you can use, like, even break it down to a single ingredient, like, hey, you have an application in your life that you can um, use this ingredient or a compound to benefit
Hmm.
what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Absolutely, when you're talking about a physical activity, I think um, it's no different than what I've seen in the business world, where people, high level entrepreneurs and executives are seeking these nootropic compounds, and really trying to find that cognitive edge. Like
Yeah.
that didn't, in my opinion. Granted, I wasn't in that circle that much, but 10 or 20 years ago, I don't think it was nearly as popular as it is now. So I think it's
Agreed.
kind of the same thing. It's just becoming a household thing. Whereas, a couple decades ago, creatine, protein, pre-workout, that was for the people that were going to the gym.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You mentioned nootropics, and I know that is one of the things that you are particularly interested in. as am I. Do you want to? I'd like to get your thinking process, your formulation philosophy behind Jocko discipline. But before we get into that, what are just some individual nootropics that you are particularly intrigued by, or ones you use on a daily basis?
Oh man. So I am a guinea pig to myself.
Hmm.
Like, and I always have been, and that's been my benefit. I literally was in my college apartment. I didn't live on the dorms, but I was in my college apartment, like literally blending in a Pyrex bowl by hand at first, and then I actually bought like a mini V blender
Hmm.
and an encapsulator. So I've been my own guinea pig. I've tried a lot of stuff over the years. Of course, when you're younger, you're willing to experiment with a little bit more hardcore stuff. At least I was. Some of those more hardcore stimulants.
Hmm.
It's hard to compete with that stuff, the hardcore stimulants, the what would be considered now banned or gray area ingredients.
Yeah.
Um, when it comes to things I'm using now, a lot of it is what's in the our energy drink. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Alpha GPC. I'm a huge fan of carnitine. I think it has a lot of not just cognitive but ergogenic properties. I think it's just it's something that much like creatine is now being accepted as a nootropic ingredient, a cognitive enhancing
Yep.
ingredient. I think you know carnitine and some of these other things. I'm a fan of theobromine.
Hmm.
I know there's not nearly as much research in it as there is in other things, but
Yeah.
I'm a believer in it. It's one of those things where sometimes um, when I have some clinical literature to stand behind,
Hmm.
but I have a lot of anecdotal experience and I can bring it to a lot of people in my network and I can say, "Hey, can you try this or let's experiment with this."
Hmm.
And I get that feedback, I'll lean
Yeah.
into it. And I'm a big
Okay.
believer in the theobromine. I believe in its vasodilation capabilities when
Hmm.
paired with caffeine, which can be somewhat constrictive depending on the dose.
Yep.
Um, so I think they pair really well together. Same thing with theanine. Um, Theanine is great if you're looking for balance, if you're looking for just a straight kick in the ass. Like I actually, when it comes to a cognitive enhancing product where you want focus, but you also want attention, like you want
Hmm.
energy, but you also want attention, I think theanine is great for that.
Yeah.
If you're looking for like a hardcore pre workout that's going to like just absolutely kick you in the ass,
Yeah.
I actually don't think it's the best application, in my opinion. I
Thank
think,
you. I agree with that 100%. I cannot stand theanine in pre-workouts, but
yeah, I just think I think it's a little bit short sighted. In our current pre workout powder that was formulated for endurance and combat sports and things like that, where you
mhm,
have a significant, not that you don't need, I don't want to take anything away from like your classic lifting gym goer,
right,
but you don't need the cognitive focus in that like you do, trying to defend someone trying to choke you or sweep,
correct.
or doing striking like Muay Thai or boxing.
Yeah.
It's just a different world.
Mhm,
So different applications. I'm working on a new pre-workout right now that is because of the high demand for it. That is um, definitely more gym focused. It's
mhm,
definitely your classic gym focus, like way more citrulline, more caffeine, dynamine, those types of things. Where it is for the gym goer that's looking for a kick in the ass. There is no theanine in there, so
yeah,
that's just my example of that. But um, I'm a believer in a few compounds. Obviously, the ones in our drink I can stand behind. It's not just
yeah,
another reason is, and I can't speak about it too much because we're trying to figure out whether we're going to publish it or not. But we just
mhm,
got clinical results back where we ran a trial with our energy drink
mhm,
of it versus placebo and it versus caffeine alone, and
yeah,
we're very 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 happy with the outcome of the
awesome.
performance. So
It was
we're
a caffeine match, thing, so the same amount of caffeine that's in
same
the
amount of
energy
caffeine.
drinks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So same amount of caffeine. So obviously you'd say, well, there's clinical literature to support the cognitive benefit of those other compounds, but sometimes that doesn't play out in real life, you know, uh, results. Like it just
Correct.
the results actually don't show up. A lot of more than 50% of trials that are conducted by people in this industry don't turn out favorable, and so they never get published or brought to the attention of the public. So
Right.
we're very excited about this one. Again, I can't talk about the exact results, but they will be public soon, which is great. I'm
Awesome.
happy about that.
Well, good. I'm glad you did it, an actual comparison versus caffeine and placebo, because a lot of times with these, especially comprehensive multi-ingredient pre-workout supplements, they will run those in a trial, but it'll be against placebo. And I thought, okay, we still don't know if it's any better than caffeine. Like theoretically, it should be, but let's compare apples to apples a little bit closer than water and then 300 milligrams of caffeine with citrulline and everything else. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, if when someone's trying to just create, like you see a lot of stuff, a lot of claims that are like versus placebo, versus placebo. Of course, versus placebo. Like, I mean, come on. So, but we wanted to prove like, was it better than caffeine alone? Like, was it better than just getting and not to say there's not other stuff in coffee, but we have 95 milligrams of caffeine in our energy drink, which is pretty low. So we were like, hey, how does this compare to 95 milligrams of actual just caffeine alone?
Mhm.
And they were all blind. They all tasted identical. And I'm super excited to publish the results. So
Do y'all ever get requests for a higher caffeinated energy drink? Because some of the products on the market are 200, 300 milligrams, 350. What is this rooted in you and your business partner's caffeine preferences? Is that, how did you come up with that amount of caffeine? And then do you ever get requests for a higher caffeinated energy drink?
it was heavily driven by Jocko's desire to keep
Mhm.
it around a cup of coffee's worth of energy, and his mentality, which makes sense, and we've always stood behind it. Is well, if somebody really wants 200 milligrams, they can consume two, technically, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you can. And trying to gauge, there are certainly people out there that are like they want 300 or 400 milligrams in a single sitting. But when we tried to go out and get some consumer feedback, a lot of people, they don't really want 300 or 400 milligrams of caffeine in a single setting. They're not finishing their 16-ounce can of X brand or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, And that's why we made it a 12-ounce sleek. That's why we made it like a little bit more compact, not your classic 16-ounce.
Mhm.
Obviously, Celsius has made a lot of headway with the 12-ounce, which is great. And actually has, it's doing good things for us, of course, too, because it's kind of after Red Bull came in and really, created the market, and then
Mhm.
Monster followed with the 16-ounce, and then Bang obviously, came and disrupted things.
Yep.
It really made it seem like, well, the future is 16 ounces. And that's kind of gone away now, over the last couple of years, which is great. Um, Having said that, I told Jocko, I'm like, hey, cool. Like, if we're going to stick to 95 milligrams of caffeine, we're going to use some other compounds
Mhm.
to be able to enhance that cognitive benefit. And the one thing that we get, like when we get people that are like, oh, you know what, I need 200 milligrams, I'm like, consume it and tell me what you think.
Yeah.
And I always get this, almost always get this response of like, "Well, it really made me feel different in a good way." They're like, and not like I drank 200 milligrams of caffeine, but it actually made me feel different in a good way, different
Mhm.
focus, a different level of feeling, mood, and things like that. So, um, we just kind of have stuck with like, if you really want it, consume two. Like
Yeah.
technically, you can still consume four in a day and be under your FDA guidelines if you follow those.
Yeah.
Um,
Or if you wanted to really push, I mean, like if you for the real ingredient nerds out there, you can go find that the ultimate, like the lethal dose of caffeine is like a couple, like two, I think 2 orders of magnitude higher than that. That you can consume upwards of like 20 grams of the stuff is the lethal dose that they've found in some of
yeah,
the old NCBI data.
I
If you go
just
back through some of that.
I just did a video recently where I do these little short ingredient information videos on
Hmm.
the Instagram, and I did one recently, and I think I said, or it was like 50 cups of coffee in a single setting.
Yeah.
and
It's
50
absurd.
it's like, yeah, it's somewhere between 20 and 50 grams is the estimated lethal dose. The same amount of people that die annually from caffeine overdose, I think die from water overdose. So
It's
it's
got a remarkably high safety profile. Now, this doesn't mean to say that there's not individual differences, that some people will get super jittery and, heart palpitations, cardiac conditions, and all that. But just like on a general term basis, broad basis, caffeine is remarkably safe and well tolerated
very, yeah,
for a pretty big margin.
and there's a big difference between, like, hey, I had an adverse event and a serious adverse event. There's
Hmm.
really big differences there, right? I
Yeah.
mean, like having some anxiety or feeling jittery or even some palpitations, like most of the time that's not serious. So um, people just need to adjust their intake or, whatever, maybe get more hydration or whatever. But it's very, 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 very safe. Very
Yeah.
safe. Yeah.
You mentioned dynamine that you're looking at for the more gym oriented pre workout
Yeah.
down the line. So that's one of the chemical cousins of caffeine. You mentioned theobromine. Have you messed around with teacrine or Zynamite, Paraxanthine, Infinity, any of those other caffeine
Tea-
enhancers, friends,
yeah,
relatives?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Teacrine, I actually really like teacrine.
Mhm.
I think it feels great. The problem with teacrine is it tastes like absolute shit. Like
Yes.
it's really bad, and it's even harder than dynamine to mask.
Hmm.
And obviously, magnitudes higher than caffeine to mask the flavor. So um, I have not been able to work it into a flavored product yet.
Hmm.
I have, uh, interestingly enough, a little bit changing gears, but in relation to teacrine,
Hmm.
are you familiar with the ingredient NAD3?
Yeah.
Okay, so NAD3 for a lot of people, because a lot of people are not familiar with it yet, because it's relatively new. It's
Hmm.
a trademark ingredient. Um, it's a certain form of copper. It's three. It's actually three ingredients. It's a certain form of copper, certain form of wasabi extract, and teacrine. And what it found was in that ratio, in that dose, minimum of 312 milligrams, it was able to increase. It was able to, number one, affect basically all measurable current measurable hallmarks of aging,
Hmm.
and increase blood levels of the metabolites of NAD. Right, so it was like, okay, looks like it's able to increase NAD. It's affecting the measurable levels of aging. Um, it fit perfect into our new product, which is releasing on March 1st, which is, in my opinion, is kind of like the pinnacle of my work so far, which is like I, as a brand
Hmm.
in the health and wellness and sports nutrition, because we're a bit of a blend
Yep.
in that world, much like creatine, we were asked and have been asked since day one for a quote unquote multivitamin, right?
Yeah.
And we just didn't do it because we've never been a me too brand. We've never launched products. All of our products are very, in a way, unique.
Yeah.
We didn't come out of the gate with a line. We didn't come out of the
Hmm.
gate and say like, hey, like the fat burners are hot. We're going to do fat burners, or test boosters are hot. We're going to do test boosters. Like we just didn't come out and say like, hey, we're going to go capture a portion of this large market. Like that's just not
Yeah.
who we are. So working with Jocko, I was like, hey, like how do we create something that will fill the need for people when it comes to their quote unquote multivitamin needs, but also be more cutting edge and also be appealing and actually get us excited.
Hmm.
So that's what we did. And we created a product that I think is going to be pretty disruptive to the industry. I think nobody's really created a product like this before. And it fits and serves a lot of needs all in one daily packet. So
Hmm.
it's one of those things where it's also because it pairs really well into the daily, let's just say like daily wellness. Let's
Yeah.
just like your overall daily wellness, healthy aging, let's say. The trouble with that category as a formulator is how do I make a product that people want to take, not that they feel like they have to take? So when the ingredient was brought to me of N83,
Mhm.
it was perfect. Dr. Hector Lopez.
Yep.
Are you familiar with Dr. Lopez?
Yeah, yeah, I've known him for we knew each other for several years. He was on the podcast last year, and when he passed away uh, back in November, that
Yeah,
was rough.
yeah,
Rough.
it was very rough. Him and I got introduced a couple years ago, and we had built a relationship over the years, like chatting about formulas and everything else. He
Mhm,
introduced us to our research center that did the research on the go,
mhm.
and yeah, it was very very unfortunate. I'm also very proud to use one of his ingredients in this new product.
When you just said N83, I thought there was a thing about said I know this ingredient, and when you were running through it, I just went and pulled it up, and it's one of the last emails I have from him with some of the data for the podcast. It's got and I'm sure you've got all this data already on it, but it says, "Hey, here's the clinical trial on this ingredient, this ingredient, this ingredient," and
Oh yeah,
it's massive. But at the very top of the email, it says, "Confidential. Do not circulate without express permission from Dr. Lopez." So are
yeah.
they? Is that going to? 'Cause I just had NutriShore, Brandon Soika, the owner of NutriShore. Is NAD3 being released under them, or is that a different brand?
I believe it's being licensed under a few distributors. Uh,
Okay.
I know Compound Solutions is one of them,
Okay.
and um, it's being one of Hector's ingredients and something that he had worked on diligently. He was very excited about it, and when we were chatting and bringing this product to life, um, I loved his idea that because I was expressing to him like, how do I create a product that people want to take, which is what I was touching on. And that's when he's like, well, NAD3 is unique because as a particular ingredient, the overall ingredient in the formula, it will have some of the benefit that you would get from teacrine
Yeah.
on a daily basis. So consuming it early morning, especially if you consume it on like an empty stomach or first thing right in the morning, there's not a lot of multivitamins or holistic wellness products that you're going to consume
Mhm.
that you're actually going to feel.
Right.
And when you consume it, like for me, teacrine, I like the way it feels. It feels good, and it also lasts
Hours and hours. It just
hours.
goes.
Yeah, and it's just like it's just different than caffeine. It's
Yeah.
obviously you have these compounds that are structurally similar, but like it's different in
Mhm.
its in the way you're going. It's in the way that it's expressed. So teacrine as part of that blend really for me gets me excited because I'm like, man, we've created a product that's going to help with people's overall wellness on a daily basis and they get to actually enjoy consuming it, which is hard in that category because unless someone's looking for a specific nootropic or an energy product or whatever,
Mhm.
like you normally don't feel things. Like same thing with like a test booster, like you don't feel it, right? You got to assume that it's working.
Yeah.
Maybe if it actually works for you and you feel like you're getting maybe some of the like the libido effects or something, that's
Yeah.
one thing. But everybody wants to create. I feel the easiest thing to sell, in my opinion, is something that gives a stimulant benefit
Very
because
much
you are
so.
feeling it.
Yeah.
And the ability to take research that shows that it's not just in there to capture the way someone feels, like it actually has real world application
Yeah.
on these longevity biomarkers. It's incredible. So it was like it really was like the cherry on top of the formula. So I was really happy to bring it in. Yeah, a little bit of a long tangent to answer your question on teacrine, but yeah,
No, it's great. It's that from a cost of goods standpoint. I mean, licensed ingredients are already, you know, considerably more expensive than their generic counterparts. It's just one of the ways to do that. But with this newer ingredient, how does this stack up against other kind of um, I guess, natural energy enhancers like NMN, nicotinamide riboside, all of those kind of things. Is it comparable to it, to where it could, you kind of plug and play one, pull out one versus the other, and the mechanisms are slightly different. To where I remember Dr. Lopez saying it's pretty much agnostic, to where you could use this and then use whatever like NMN, MNR, and AD plus whatever else you wanted to do, because it's working at a different point in the pathway, in the biological pathway. So, but just from like a cost of goods for consumers out there to understand, where is this kind of falling if we're looking at like a cost per serving almost?
That's a great question. One that, unless you're like really ingrained in the industry, you're not going to understand, or even know to ask. So that was a major factor when working on this formula, was like, how do we make this work? Because NAD3 itself is an extremely expensive compound, because it plays in that world with NMN, which is also very expensive,
Yep.
and you actually need a lot of NMN, um, to make a real actual difference. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not the expert on NMN, but I think you need like a gram. Um,
Yeah, I think 500 is the minimum, but I
okay.
haven't done any NMM research in a while. Plus, it's in limbo right now with the FDA. I mean, I think it's all eventually going to get greenlit and get the thumbs up. Maybe even like something like NAC is,
Yeah,
but I just haven't done enough research because it seemed kind of weak in the beginning, or at least the nicotinamide riboside stuff did, 4 or 5 years ago when that first started popping off.
it's
Um,
definitely a little, um, definitely a little weak. I think there was new research that came out on NMN, which did somewhat impress me. I believe, don't quote me, it was around a gram daily was able to double NAD levels.
mhm.
I want to see that retested. I want, and I really want to see that, prove itself out, because if so, like that's potentially, uh, powerful. That would be a really powerful increase to double, NAD levels.
Mhm.
I got to see that actually come into to real world practice, in my opinion. Um, that said, NAD3 is also extremely expensive. So
Yeah.
what we decided was, okay, well, where do we want to be at with this product? So it's the product itself. It comes in a box. It has a tearaway. It comes in a pouch.
Mhm.
Each one of the blends. So there's the vitamin blend. There's a small mineral blend. There's an adaptogen blend, and then there's the healthy aging blend. There's
Mhm.
a total of five, pills or capsules, tablet, of the multivitamin. But you have this once daily pack that you kind of get your, your, vitamin, basically only the vitamins that are really deficient in the Western diet.
Yeah.
um, and there's a heart health there, there's brain health, there's eye health, um, and then of course all the healthy aging stuff. So we were like, how do we price this? We've always been premium, but we didn't want to price it so far premium that it was like really only for, um like that niche. Like we want this to be able to have mass adoption.
Yeah, you don't want an $80 multivitamin, because I mean, nobody's going to buy that. I mean, not in the volume that you would like it to sell is what I mean. So,
So it's exactly. So when we looked, so I used, a couple people on our team, and we were like, okay, how do we move forward with this? Because it's not like central. You know what I mean? It's not a multivitamin in the sense of like, how do we market it? Because I broke it down for our marketing team, uh,
mhm.
and a bunch of other team members, and I was like, listen, this is what it does. Like, does it have the multivitamin in it? Sure, but that's not what people are really buying. Like, will people who buy our products, will our customers, our built-in, our people, will they buy it because it's a multivitamin? Sure. But that's not where it's like where the breakthrough is. That's
Yeah.
not where the real competitive advantage is. So let's see what the other products in the category. So when you started breaking it up to like all the different products, it
Mhm.
would be like a $300 product. Like, okay, well, if you take this blend and you charge like retail at a premium level, this blend, this blend, this blend, you're like, okay, like that nobody's going to pay that. So
Right.
we went and looked at like what was kind of comparable, even though we believe our formula is way more powerful. So you have like the on it daily packs.
Hmm.
You take like AG1 or something, like they're over $100,
Yep.
those particular things. So we wanted to we were like, okay, we're gonna keep it under um three figures. And then how do we make it more affordable to people that we consider our people that shop direct on the website?
Yeah.
That's what we did. So we're offering a 20% discount for subscription. We're keeping it under $100. And in our opinion, it's a very good deal when you look at the cost to actually manufacture the product.
Right.
So um,
Cool. I'm excited to see that when it drops.
it's
That'll be a
it's pretty
formula.
exciting. Yeah. And that'll probably be the focus of our next clinical study. Will be that product.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are y'all going to use the same research team for that y'all did for the energy drink, or y'all going to go to a different one, or is that still kind of being decided on?
Right now, I would say yes. We have had some um, people in academia reach out and want to do like their own. They're like JOCKO fans and they're like, hey, I'm at this university. I'm here. I'm here. I want to do stuff for you guys. That's the one benefit we found being partnered with JOCKO is like, and he's an equity partner. He's not just like a paid face to the brand.
Right.
Um, People from all over are influenced by him, at all
Yeah.
levels. So they're like, if they're fans of his, they want to reach out and like help us, which has been phenomenal. That's
Yeah.
something we just couldn't have quantified early on. And so this is one of those areas. And we may do some in other places. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. What is kind of your mindset when you've got a fresh product? So is it more of trying to find like a complementary? I don't want to use synergy because I feel like that term's almost thrown around too much in our industry. Like we've
Yeah.
come up with this one that synergizes, but how do you strike the balance? Because in an ideal world, you would fully dose every single ingredient in the product, but then you've got $150 product, when it's coming out of the manufacturer, so you're going to have to turn around and sell it to retailers for $300, $400. At where does the rubber hit the road where you decide, okay, I'm okay making a trade-off between either trimming away certain ingredients or dialing dosages back to where maybe we can get some of that complementary action to where, one plus one is a three kind of thing going on.
Mhm. I think it just depends on the product, and I think it depends on what your particular achieved outcome is. Like,
Yeah.
what is it you're trying to accomplish? So, yeah, and it really just depends on that because with some ingredients, the way they work together, you're right. Like you can use um, less of that particular ingredient. With multiple ingredients, you're probably going to have a better final outcome.
Hmm.
Whereas if you were to just make it a single ingredient or you were to cut the ingredients in half, you probably wouldn't get as much benefit.
Right.
Whereas in certain other areas, like like, hey, like like for, all right, it's not to throw the industry under the bus, but this would be similar to um
This is gonna be good already, I could tell.
it's like throwing a gram or 500 milligrams of creatine in a pre-workout
Yeah.
and just being like, oh yeah, just to have creatine in it. Like we have never you mentioned trademark ingredients. We've never like used trademarked ingredients and marketed those like and tried to be like, hey, this is this hype ingredient or whatever. That's just not us. We've never done that. Um, we've never also hyped around a single ingredient. So we wouldn't necessarily as a brand, like if you like we have a brand book, right?
Hmm.
And it has our principles in it. And in our principles is like trust. Like we wouldn't put, creatine on the top of the label and have like a fake version of it or a uh or a micro dose of it. Like
Yeah.
like there's another energy drink, and again, like people can look at our stuff and talk shit, and I'm sure they do, and that's fine. And I don't want to be a shit talker, but this is just my opinion and just my perspective.
Yeah.
Period.
You
And
wouldn't put a super form of creatine around the label, around the
No,
top
I
of the
probably
can or
I probably wouldn't
anything.
do that. I also wouldn't put 250 milligrams of BCAAs in a formula and also say like BCAAs as one of like the big bullets on the side or something.
Exactly.
Um, Not that there's any like major celebrities out there doing that right now. But so I got off track there. What were we talking about?
Energy drinks,
Uh,
the kind of the blend of the ingredients, push comes to shove.
yeah, yeah. So when it comes to prioritizing ingredients versus like eliminating ingredients, yeah, you want some of that, like let's say synergy.
Yeah.
Like the one thing that's beautiful, because I think nutraceuticals in general, like supplements, this is still, in my opinion, like the Wild West. And it's still very, very, very early on. And I hope that they get as much love and attention and that real money and real research
Mhm.
comes into the space. I
Yeah.
hope it doesn't get over commercialized and things just get, you know, just abandoned and things get too commercialized. But I also want to see real money come in and spend on the data. So that said, right now in like let's say the Wild West, you still have to look at individual applications and say, okay, where am I going to get synergy? Where, mechanistically, where am
Mhm.
I going to get like mechanistic overlap? Like, where am I going to like basically be wasting benefit and
Right.
and throwing away the ingredient for no reason, simply to have it in the formula to say you have it in the formula.
Right.
Um, and then what's worse than that is like, is there anything in there that's negating the benefit? Like, is there anything in there that's like, if you're trying to achieve this ingredient's actually, thwarting that
Counteracting.
benefit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've seen that a fair amount as well. Again, go back to a hardcore pre-workout. Having theanine in a hardcore pre-workout isn't the like if someone's looking for an absolute kick in the ass and not like, hey, I need energy and I need focus. I need to go to work and sit in a board meeting, or I need to go sit down at a computer and focus. I believe theanine has a great application for that. If
Yeah.
you're looking to absolutely just be sent into space and you want to go set a new PR, like I wouldn't put theanine in that product.
Exactly.
That's me. So um yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but that's
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Are there any specific nootropics that you tend to cycle and ones that you use every day? Obviously, the ones that are, probably in discipline and the Go Energy drink, you're taking those every day. But are there any that you just kind of save for one-off application? This is probably like individual ingredients, not necessarily one of the ingredients that's in one of the products you'll currently supply, but something like a new pept or a racetam or anything like that. Do you ever mess around with those and just kind of cycle through those every now and then?
so I yes, but there's also a level of like there's ingredients that I will personally um, experiment with
Mhm.
that will probably never formulate with because
Right.
they're
Yeah.
just too outside of the box for the Jocko brand. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
the moment that we switched from Origin to Jocko and then it became Jocko Fuel, the brand, and really was like the brand and the man, um, it really put like guardrails on like,
Mhm.
hey, these are just like research compounds, things that are just like you said, with NMN and potentially with the FDA, NAC, NAC with like even that, like we were discussing it before it kind of, which I think they kind of came out and I'm not sure how. I think
Yeah,
that
as long as you're pretty much not making any stupid claims saying it's gonna cure X, Y, and Z disease
yeah,
or something, you're gonna be fine to use it. And I think it's back on Amazon now, or it
which
will
is
be soon.
interesting because that was going on for a couple of years. So,
Yeah.
which is good to see. I'm actually that's to me that's a win for the industry.
Yeah, and I love the ingredient too. I mean, I've extolled its benefits numerous times over the
Yeah,
years. I think it's a phenomenal ingredient that's been around for decades.
it really is. So I'm glad that the industry got that win. But I mean, are there any again for me? I always found there are certain some of the ingredients you named, absolutely beneficial. Personally, as my own guinea pig, I always found that the best nootropic ingredients were those that were pretty highly stimulating, whether that's because I have a certain form of ADD or ADHD, depending on like there's 7 different forms or types, depending on what you believe. Everyone has, which is really no different than the way that they prescribe pharmaceuticals for attention issues,
Mhm.
is depending on the person and what their characteristics are. For instance, me and my wife are totally different. Like I would take something, I'd take a chemical a lot different than she would take for attention and focus.
Right.
Um, so for me, nothing really compares to some of those old school. I loved the benefits that I would get from the 1,3s, the
Mhm.
ephedra, back in the day, like
Yeah.
those compounds. Man, nothing made me feel as cognitively on fire as those. And maybe that's
Mhm.
just the way my brain chemistry works.
Yeah. That makes
So,
sense.
um, without those, I would say like everything else is kind of like child's play for me,
Yeah.
But I know some people, man, aniracetam, like these things, like
Mhm.
are just people like love them, and I think that's phenomenal. Again, I want to see more data and more research come down the line to
Agreed.
support the use of those, and I would love to see them get. Um, I want to see more ingredients get like grass. I want to see
Mhm.
more get recognized because, for instance, like we have a supplement facts on our energy drink, like a
Yeah.
supplement facts, not a nutritional facts, and that's because not all the ingredients are technically grass, right? And if we were
Yeah.
to kind of hide them in a proprietary blend and not really call them out and things like some other brands do, I would say like we could probably tuck them away enough to put a nutrition facts panel on there,
Mhm.
which is also, by the way, super beneficial from a business standpoint. A lot of people don't know or don't really think about this when they're creating a product, but if your product doesn't have a nutrition facts panel and it has a supplement facts panel, it doesn't qualify for um, what's it called with the I'm like blanking the name of it for low income where they get the credit.
Oh, the food stamps card or
Yes.
something?
Yeah, like food
Interesting.
stamps card. Yeah, so without a nutrition facts panel, you can't buy it. So, for
Huh.
instance, like us, and I believe Celsius has a supplement facts panel as well. Um,
Yeah.
you can't buy those with, I think they call is it SNAP benefits? Or like,
Yeah, that's what it is, yeah.
um, and not that we want that to be the core purpose of our business. I think someone should be buying, things that they need for the household if they're on a low income.
Yeah.
Let's
Get
be
your
honest.
chicken, rice, oatmeal, get the staples first, and then, supplements are a luxury
Yeah,
in most cases.
exactly. But at the end of the day, like if somebody's going to have one of those, if somebody's going to be in that life situation, we still believe like we are the healthier and more beneficial option than some of those other energy drinks. So it would be nice to be able to serve that customer, with a healthier and more beneficial product, but something that um, I think will come down the line as more ingredients get grass.
Excellent. We're coming up on the hour mark, Brian, so I know you gotta get
Yes.
rolling soon. Is there anything you wanna plug before, we put a bow on the package and send it at the door?
No, I mean, just appreciate the time today. I love talking about this stuff. It's, I do a lot of business podcasts, like
Mhm.
business interviews and things like that. So it's very refreshing to get like ingredient questions and so happy to jump on again with you. And I feel like there's a lot more to talk about. So, but yeah, if people want to check out JOCKO FUEL, go to jockofuel.com.
Mhm.
I'm on all the social channels, and I make videos um, talking about ingredients, and some on TikTok to talking shit about some creators and some of the craziness. Mostly around like the crazy conspiracy theorists, nutritionists, those types of people.
Mhm.
Less so like supplements and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, yeah. So I have a question for you.
Sure. Fire away.
Um, in the world of and I won't hold it against you, but in the world of um, everybody clinging to the next boogeyman,
Mhm.
what's your take on seed oils?
I I'm not of the belief that having a little bit of canola oil, if I'm using it to like cook like my nonstick canola oil sprayer, if I just use a little bit, if I'm making a batch of whatever, I don't think it's this hyper inflammatory thing that's going to cause me to keel over and die or something like that. I mean, if you're of reasonably healthy body composition, you're getting enough sleep, your stress level's fine, you're training hard, eating right, doing all that stuff. Um, Taking your vitamins. You're in a good life situation. Life stress is low. You're happily married. You're in a good job. All that good stuff. Do I think you really need to be worried about a little bit of canola oil now? If you're drinking a gallon of it a day, eating nothing but hyper processed foods, and doing all this other stuff, yeah, we got some issues there, and that will probably lead to some very deleterious effects. But for the like, am I worried if my 5-year-old has a cupcake that's got some canola oil in it or like vegetable? No, like you, that's like the boogeyman level stuff to where the paleo crowd. And if you're a big paleo fan, I'm sorry, or if I'm about to insult you here, but the anti-nutrients, the lectins, the phytates, all that shit that was going on 5, 10 years ago. I mean, you soak the beans, you're going to be fine. This is not humanity's biggest enemy when it comes to promoting health. It is not the lectins in the beans that's making your ass fat. It's eating 6,000 calories a day, not exercising, and having shitty sleep. So,
Yeah, yeah, no,
sorry, oh, no, that was a whole
no,
rant.
no,
So,
that's great. That's a great answer, and I actually agree with you. I think probably 100%. I personally I don't fear those things at all because at the end of the day, to me, it all goes back to a balanced diet, right? Like
yes,
you've got to have balance. And I was talking to someone in the industry recently who's very, very like they um, exceed my level of expertise in this industry. That's for sure. And I asked him, and he's just like, man, like it goes back to the old adage, like too much of anything is never good. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. Like we just talked about it. Caffeine, you can die, takes a lot. Water,
yeah,
you can die, takes a lot.
yeah,
Omega 3s can cause AFib if you're going to be consuming, 10 grams of fish oil in a single setting or something
yeah.
on for a year. So it all comes back to a balance. I do believe that there's probably a good omega 3 to omega 6 ratio.
Hmm.
Omega 9s come into play as well. Like the balance between poly and monounsaturated fats, I think is really important. Same thing with carbohydrates. Same thing with saturated fats. Like,
Yeah,
but the idea,
cholesterol. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. But the idea that there's like this one, people want to blame their issues and their problems on one thing. And they're like, oh, if I
mhm,
just do this one thing, then you know, it's going to solve all my problems. And that's just not the case. You're absolutely right.
yeah.
Why are people fatter than ever? Because they're eating more than ever. They're consuming more
Yeah.
calories than ever.
Life
And
is more comfortable than ever, and we just you get fat and happy. There's a reason that expression exists. It's
exactly.
that's
Yeah.
what happens.
No,
It's
that's fine. So anyone I know that knows anything about the science, I like to ask them that question right now because it's such a hot topic. So
oh, I
it's
didn't realize that had come back. I feel like that got big like
this
2012, 2015 or something. The whole
which
seed oil thing.
oh man, it is on fire right now.
Oh man, no.
I
See,
mean
I'm not.
on
If oh, okay, all right. I'll have to go back and look into that. I've been mired down too much in ingredient nerdy stuff, not as much as into the nutrition science as much lately.
no, it's all
Um,
good.
I remember to do that. Okay, well, good. That might be the question that passed me to ask you for another interview down the line. Then hopefully I
Yeah.
answered right. If not, if I would have said it was the bane of humanity's existence, you probably said, "Oh, probably not going to talk to this nut job ever again."
No, I mean, what I would have said was like, tell me why. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I am open to changing my mind about anything. It could
yeah,
be an
agreed.
ingredient, a diet type. Everybody wants to talk about carnivore. Like I can have a conversation with anyone about anything. Same
Hmm.
thing with politics, and I can change my mind. I've changed my mind a lot. I was thinking about something recently where I totally backtracked on, and I'm trying to think of what it was. I would say I've backtracked a little bit on exogenous melatonin, Like,
Mhm.
I used to really hate on it, a lot. Like, I used to be like, "Hey, because it is a hormone, like, hey, you should probably not consume it." Um, that said, do I think that it has its place? I do. I do think
Yeah,
it has its place. But do I think you should consume it every day? No, I still don't. Like, personally, that's just my
agreed. No, I would agree with you that I mean, if you're having that much trouble at sleep, this is n uh, what's the word? Putting people that actually have a sleep disorder to the side. We're
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
for the average normal healthy person. If you are taking a wallop of a sleep supplement every day, something that's got 10 grams of melatonin, or even as much as like 10 milligrams of melatonin a day, plus six other ingredients, megadosed. I think there's some other sleep hygiene habits you need to look at first. If you have a rough night and you need a sleep aid, you got a newborn that you're dealing with, I, that's fine. I'm not talking about that case. I'm talking about the person that is megadosing that, drinking themselves to sleep at night, and doing all that stuff. There's other issues at bay. There's deeper issues that need to be fixed first.
Exactly. Yep.
So.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, then, this was an awesome episode, Brian. I definitely want to get you back on because there's a whole bunch of other ingredient wormholes we can dive into and go through, that's one of the reasons I love doing these podcasts.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for your time. There will be links to all of your contact details, Jocko Fuel, and yeah, just thank you very much for your time. This was a blast, man.
Awesome. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. We'll talk
Yeah.
soon.
All right. Bye.